Thank you, Benoit, for that lovely introduction. And hello, everyone. My name is Jen Colchin. When I do this, my husband disappears. I'm a board certified behavior analyst, and I am a specialist behavior support practitioner. And my specialty really is trauma-informed positive behavior support. So I'm the director of specialist behavior, which is here, but I'm also a permanent care. And I've been a kinship care, and I also was a trauma affected kid. So I have experienced trauma kind of on all sides. So what I'm bringing you tonight is really just a simple, I'm going to preface this by saying, I've been doing this a long time. Like, I've been a clinician for 24 years, and dealing with my own kids at times, I'm like, I need professional assistance. I'm going to lose my ish. So I think, Benoit, you really hit it right on the nail when you said we're all just people. We are all just people. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, is how we can stay grounded when we are trying to support the behavior of the little people that we're caring for. So that's the topic of tonight's conversation. And I will go ahead and share my slide. Where am I? Share screen. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Share. Now, get rid of that. Can you see Loki the cat there? Yes, you can see Loki? Okay, good. That means I know that you can see my screen. Here we go. Okay. You can go down there. I want to say, if you do have any questions, please, I will leave time at the end for questions. I do have to leave like dead on 9 o'clock. But I will say that if you have any questions, comments, please add them to the chat as we go, because I'm really interested in your thoughts, in your feedback, and Benoit's going to be monitoring that chat. So if somebody says something you like or asks a question that you really want answered, go ahead and like that or give it a bit of love so that we know that takes the priority. Okay, so we will start with here. No, that's not what I wanted. Okay, so FYI, this is my company. This is Specialist Behavior. This is what we do. And I'm really, really passionate about making good practice or best practice easy to understand and easy to do. So our overview tonight is really focusing on the whys and the hows of challenging behavior, but also the strategies to keep ourselves grounded and bring the calm rather than join the chaos. So we're going to start with a bit of, learning and rationale, and then we're going to go through each step, and I'm going to be very, very mindful of the time. Also, my husband Hugh is here with us. He is also a permanent care, so I invited him in, but I told him he's not allowed to talk unless I ask him a specific question, because to me, you're here to see. So, haha, sucker. Okay. So our learning objectives here are to understand what is challenging behavior, and not only what it is, like everybody knows what it is. When someone's throwing a chair across the room, like, that's challenging. We get it. But why does it happen? And if we're going to understand the whys of challenging behavior, then we need to understand at least a little bit about the brain. We don't have to be neuroscientists, but we have to understand basic brain functions and the ways in which the ascending way in which our skills and our abilities are formed as our brain grows. You all probably would have had some training in this. So I'm going to preface what I'm going to say in the session by acknowledging the experience and the previous teaching and learning that you all are bringing to the room as well. So if I'm telling you stuff that you already know, please know that I mean no offense. I just want everyone to have the same solid foundation and understanding. So we're going to go through the whats, we're going to go through the whys, And then we're going to go through the, well, what do we do about it? The house. And these are the strategies and tips throughout this session. So I'm also going to send through our associated resources that come with this course to be disseminated to everyone here tonight. So I'll do that through the PCA families. So our definition of challenging behavior, also known as behaviors of concern, are really, the reason we have to define it is because we can't solve a problem that we haven't clearly understood or we haven't clearly defined. So challenging behavior is really any behavior that is either a barrier to the person participating in or being part of their community, and that poses a risk to the health and safety of that person or the people around them, and or undermines an individual's rights and dignity and quality of life. That's a really fancy way of saying a person has unmet needs. It's coming out sideways and they're throwing chairs across the room, or they're calling you an F&C. Is somebody doing this for me? Because I'm not pressing my slides. Is this just like naturally happening? This has never happened to me before.
Yeah, I don't know what it's doing.
Oh, it's working for me though. So with our brain development, as I said, you don't need to be neuroscientists, but you have to have a basic understanding of the ages and stages in which our brain is formed. Because as humans, everything
goes across to my other device. Sorry.
Because as people, as Benoit said, as people, everything we do is behavior, and all behavior meets a need. And our behavior comes from our brain. So events influence our emotions, and our emotions are what motivates our behavior. And that's the mind body environment connection. So if we're looking at the brain, the first part of our brain to develop is the brainstem. It's our homeostatic functioning, like homeo, like our homies are here to keep us alive, right? So it's responsible for things like our autonomic central nervous system, our breathing, our heart rate, the things that we tend not to think about too much until they stop working very well, and then we think about them a lot. Like our heart rate is just really off, or I can't breathe very well, or I can't regulate my temperature. Like that seems to take your central focus. And that function, that brainstem, comes online independently in utero. And the reason I'm telling you this is because this is important to know with the little people that you're supporting, is that if they have experienced some form of trauma or teratogen, a teratogen is something that is introduced in utero that baby experiences that can alter and stop that typical development. So for example, you all would have heard of thalidomide from the 1960s. Thalidomide was a teratogen that prevented the normal growth of the limbs. So that's important to keep in mind. If your little person was exposed to alcohol in utero, may have been exposed to drugs, may have been, born addicted to opiates, family violence, all that cortisol goes right through to the blood barrier brain and goes right through to baby. So, and that can alter that elevated stress response and how that baby, and babies become little people and little people become big people, see and feel about the world and the things around them. So the rest of this is our midbrain. This is the bulby bit at the back of your skull. Here's one that I've prepared earlier. So this is your midbrain. It's your cerebellum. It's responsible for things for your rest and digest. So like your circadian rhythm, which is why we feel tired at night, because our brain releases melatonin, and why we wake up in the morning because our brain releases cortisol. Satiety is the ability to feel full, sensory motor movement. And this part of the brain comes online independently at about 6 months of age, which is why little babies, like if you've ever cared for a little baby or like known somebody who's had a little baby, you will know that they are like obsessed with getting their babies on a schedule, on a feeding schedule, on a sleeping schedule, on a whatever schedule, because that part of baby's brain hasn't quite kicked into gear independently just yet. So if there's been trauma around the time when that part of the brain was being developed, some of the behaviors that we might see are difficulty sleeping, picky eaters, difficulty eating, difficulty regulating or kind of knowing that mind-body connection. So keep that in mind, that there often is a biological, neurological function, reason for the behavior, which we're going to get into, and I'm watching the time very closely. The next two parts of our brain, which are really important, and that's where we're really going to focus, are our limbic system and our cortex. So our limbic system, it's in the center of your brain. Like you can't actually touch it unless you're dead, and then you probably couldn't touch it anyway. But it's in the center of your brain, and we kind of call it the feeling brain because it's responsible for things like our survival response that lives here, our fight, flight, our amygdala, all that like danger, Will Rogers detection is in our limbic system. It's responsible for our emotional regulation, our emotional modulation, which means like matching our behaviors to the situation at hand. This part of the brain comes online independently at about 2 or 3 years old, which is why toddlers are little emotional time bombs. Like they're not just being jerks. There is an actual reason why they have big reactions to seemingly small things. Oh no, go back, stop that. Go, you stop that. Sorry, I'm shouty at my thing. Okay, slideshow. Play from current slide. Thank you. So they have big reactions to seemingly small things. It's like the biscuit is broken. It's the same biscuit, but the world just ended and I'm being murdered, according to my child who's now screaming bloody murder. So they just get overwhelmed. Sometimes they're like little computers where they just get overwhelmed with too much information and too much stimulation, and they just need to shut down. They need to shut down, reboot. They need a cookie and a cuddle, and then they boot back up and everything's fine and ready to go. And really, at the end of the day, who couldn't use a cookie and a cuddle? The other thing I want to mention is that carers and parents of teenagers, and this is where I can usually tell who's a parent or a carer of a teenager, because they go, just know that this part of the brain, the limbic system, our feeling brain, because it's responsible for our emotional regulation, has a bit of a restructure about the time that the child enters puberty, which is why teenagers can also seem like little emotional time bombs. There's a biological reason for it. It's like someone has put a sign on the front door of the limbic system that's like out for refurbishment back in a few years. It does come back online, comes back, 2.0 in its best version. And this is where people who've been dealing with teenagers for a while tend to look at me and go, when does it come back and get better? And the answer is usually towards the end of physical maturity. So kind of like towards the ends of teenagerhood, they come back and become adults. Yay. The last part of our brain we're going to talk about is our cortex. And it is the last part of our brain to come online. It comes online independently, fully, about the time we're 5 years old. And we refer to it as our thinking brain. Not to say that kids younger than 5 can't think and learn. They absolutely can. But this is when the really advanced just human parts of our brain come online independently. It's our cortex. It's the part that sits over your brain. We have the squishy brain over there.
Mhm.
That could have shown the squishy brain. Anyway, it sits over here, and we call it our thinking brain. It's the last part of the brain to develops at about age 5. And this part here is your prefrontal cortex. That is where our executive functions live. Things like planning, sequencing, explicit memory, learning from past consequences, abstract thinking, all that stuff is in our trains conductor, our prefrontal cortex. And that comes online independently at about 5 years old, and then it grows from there. But again, if there's been trauma, if there's been abuse, if there's been some interruption to that natural sequence of development, then that prefrontal cortex is not going to be completely online, which means that we're going to have difficulty with things like knowing what to expect and changes to what I'm used to and problem solving and learning from past events and past experiences. Are there any questions so far about the brain and what I've said before I move on? Silence usually means we're good. Good. Okay. Like I said, the chat's there, so please, and ignore my dogs. They like to be involved. As I said, shut up. As I said, every behavior, everything we do as humans is behavior, and every behavior has a purpose. It meets a need. It has a function. So I'm trying to get my thingy out of the way. Get out of the way. So what that means is that behavior, well, whether it's good behavior or bad behavior, quote unquote bad behavior, has a purpose. It meets a need for that person. So this goes into your pedagogy, just FYI, if you're a research nerd like myself. This is based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. These are our basic human needs that we need to thrive and not just survive. And you can see it's kind of like a pyramid. So our physiological needs are at the bottom of that pyramid because that's our most basic needs: food, shelter, safety. And as we go up, love, belonging, esteem, self-actualization, agency, those things are just as important. And often the behavior is trying to meet that need. It's just coming out sideways. So we have to kind of think of an iceberg when we think of challenging behavior. And I can't remember if I actually have a diagram, which I'll send you if I don't have in this presentation, but it's called the bad behavior iceberg. And what that is it means that we tend to just look at challenging behavior at a surface level, because that's what takes our attention, right? Like if someone's kicking a chair across a room, like that's what's going to get your attention. If someone's standing in front of you saying, I'm going to stab you, you're an effing C, like you have my full undivided attention at this moment. So what we need to do though is just challenge ourselves to think a little bit deeper, because all behavior is driven by an unmet need. So is the behavior serving the purpose of, for example, seeking a feeling of safety and connection? And I will tell you that for kids in out-of-home care, for kids who've experienced trauma, the number one function of their behaviors of concern is safety seeking. And often we'll see things like boundary behaviors. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with boundary behaviors, but they're really, really common in trauma-affected kids, especially kids who have had multiple placements. And it's because of their experience of the adults who were meant to care and look after them. So for that child who's had the experience where the world isn't good and safe, it's actually dangerous and I don't know what to expect, boundary behaviors are what you're going to get, because they're still a child. And it's this kind of dichotomy of needing the closeness of adults, but then being really scared about that closeness. You know, I need you, I need you, I need you, not too close because you're going to leave me like everyone else. So I'm going to push you away. And those behaviors are really probably the most challenging for people for carers in out-of-home care, because sometimes they come out of nowhere, but often they come right after a time of bonding or something. Really, you're like, oh, we were having such a great time, like we were having such a lovely conversation or some, and then they just exploded. It just came out of nowhere. So it is this kind of internal battle of I need you, I need you, I need you, you're dangerous, get away, get away, get away. So we have to challenge ourselves to think, what is the unmet need here? So don't just look at the surface of the behavior. Is the person or the child asking for help? Are they trying to escape something aversive, like a particular smell, or maybe they don't want to take a shower, or maybe they don't want to brush their teeth, even though they do it. They're supposed to do it every night. Like this is not new. That's what I'm saying. So getting something such as an object, I think we're all familiar with the, like, give me the iPad or I'm going to hold my breath until I turn blue. That's an unmet need. I want the thing. The behavior is, I'm going to hold my breath until I turn blue. And I'm like, all right, let's see how that works out for you. Side note, they're going to be fine. Don't worry. So you may not always know what the unmet need is, and that's okay. What I'm going to challenge you to do is look deeper and look and think beyond the surface. So you may be asking yourself, well, why should I keep my calm? They're the one having the behavior. They're the one calling me an effing C. They're the one saying, you're not my real mom and dad, and and that, that hurts. Absolutely. So why should I keep my calm? Well, first off, everybody chill. Like, I've done this for 24 years. And that's usually the first thing I say, because everyone gets ups in arms. And it's really challenging when you're in it and when your emotions are in it. So the first thing I always say is, all right, everybody chill. Everybody chill, just get the lids on. So when we're in the feeling part of our brain, you may have seen Dan Siegel's hand brain model before. I'm not just doing Flappy Bird at you. But the limbic system, like if you kind of fold your thumb into your four fingers and turn your hand to the side, you get a kind of a cool puppet, but it actually kind of looks like a brain. So your diencephalon, there it is. Your brainstem is here, right? Goes from here to your spinal cord. And then your diencephalon, your midbrain is here. That's the bulby bit at the back of your skull. And then you open up your hand, and right in the middle here is your limbic system. Your amygdala, which is your threat detection system, is here. And then over the top of that is our cortex and our thinking brain. When we have, whoever you are, big person, little person, somewhere in between, whenever we have a big feeling or an emotion, or we're having a moment or behavior of concern, we have flipped our lid, which means we are in the feeling part of our brain and we don't have access to the thinking part of our brain at that moment. And I don't know about you, but if I've ever been having a moment and somebody shouts at me to just calm down, I'm like, don't you tell me to calm down, Shouty McGee, you calm down. So first thing is everybody chill, because we have to model the behavior that we want our kids to see. And the kids in our care you may be the first and only well-regulated, healthy adult connection that the child you're caring for has ever come into contact with. Keep that in mind. So don't meet force with force. I said this in a training once, and I'll never forget it. I said, what do you do when someone flips their lid at you? And this woman in the front said, you flip it back at them. I was like, yeah, you do. Because that's how mirror neurons work. Mirror neurons are our neural Wi-Fi. It's our vibes. It's like the vibes. Like, I don't like the vibes here. Or like, ooh, the hairs on the back of your neck when you're like, oh, this feels oogie. I don't know why. Or like, you just feel creepy and I can't quite put my finger on it. That's your amygdala trying to get your attention, saying, ooh, danger, danger. So nobody wins in the power struggle. Nobody wins in the power struggle. So don't meet force with force. Remember mirror neurons. We have to keep our lid on, nice and tight. It's okay to express emotions, but we don't want to join the chaos. So we have to keep our lid on nice and tight, and that because we need to co-regulate and connect and model the behavior that we want our little people to see and to engage in. I'm just seeing some brain changes prematurely due to abuse trauma and precocious puberty trauma. That is, yes. If you're interested in any of this kind of brain-based trauma work, I would recommend Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score. I'll put it in the chat. That is all about the lifelong impact that exposure to adverse childhood experiences can have on a person throughout the lifespan. The other person, that sequential model of brain comes from the work of Bruce Perry, who you might have heard of. He wrote a book with Oprah, so that's a thing. And he's like the child trauma guru. He's written a bunch of books too. I will caution you. He wrote this book, The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog, And Bruce Perry is the brain behind that neurosequential model. So if you want to know more, I would go to Bruce Perry about the brain and Bessel van der Kolk about trauma. But I will just give you a bit of a warning that The Boy Who Was Raised as a Dog is a really heavy read, because it's based on actual really traumatic case studies. So just be aware of that. Bessel's a little more like chill and Dutch. So he is actually Dutch. So yeah, for what it's worth. Okay. Step one. Step one to staying grounded and keeping your calm is breathing. So let's follow the prompts. I'm going to ask you to do this with me. Go away, you. So when you take a nice, I just want you to see if you can align your breathing with the GIF. And while you're doing that, I'm going to give you a tip about belly breathing. So most people take really shallow breaths just to the top of their lungs, but your lungs, keep going with the GIF. Your lungs actually go all the way down, to the bottom of your ribs. When you take a deep diaphragmatic breath, which means we're using our diaphragm, it means we're getting more oxygen and we are triggering our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous system. So when we take a big, you'll know you're taking a big belly breath. There's a trick to know how to do this. You can take your two hands, take your two middle fingers, just gently touch them together. And you can either place them under your belly button, or if you're more comfortable, you can place them on your back. And as you breathe, if you're taking really deep diaphragmatic breaths, your fingers should separate slightly as you inhale. So I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to keep breathing with the GIF and use that. See if you can get your fingers to move in that deep diaphragmatic breathing. One more time. Oh, it ended. Okay, sorry. I don't know why it goes. It's like, Jen, keep moving. It's telling me to keep going. So breathe. That, because breathing is pausing. The difference, so reacting comes from here, comes from our feeling brain. Responding comes from here, comes from our thinking brain. That's why it's really important to keep our own lids on so that we can guide the lids of the little people that we're caring for. So first off, just pause. If you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling triggered, if you're just like, I'm gonna lose my, take a break. Take a break. It's okay. Timeout can be strategic for both. It's okay to show your emotions. It's okay to show that you're frustrated sometimes. It's okay to show that you're angry, as long as you teach through that. I was angry because that was my favorite, or I'm really upset because that my grandmother's plate you smashed and it meant a lot to me, and I'm really sad. And that's okay to express, in the right way. You're not saying you're a piece of that because you broke my thing, but we are modeling what healthy behavior and reactions look like. So you have to consider yourself as kind of being the lighthouse in the storm. We are guiding our little people to safety through our interactions, through our calm, and having a plan for ourselves. You need to know what really pisses you off, because everybody has a thing. I'm just going to say everybody has a thing. Doesn't matter who you are, big person, little person, somewhere in between. You have a thing, whether it's a particular word like the C word, or this word, moist. Maybe it's a particular behavior like biting or spitting, or maybe it's vomiting or poo. I don't know. You do you. I'm just saying everybody has a thing. Know what your thing is. Your thing is your thing for a reason, right? So you have to have a plan for what you're going to do when you are faced with your thing. You have to have a plan in your mind, kind of almost like a fire drill, right? We do fire drills when there's no fire, so that in the off chance there ever is a fire, we know exactly what to do because we've practiced it so many times. because when the building is on fire is not the time to start arguing about where the closest exits are, who's going to wear the stupid hat, you know, the warden hat, who's going to bring the first aid. No, no, no. That has to be like muscle memory. And that's the same for us. So know what really gets your goat and have a plan. What are 3 ways you're going to keep your cool when you are faced with that thing? Have those 3 things in your mind ready to go, because when your lid is flipped, you don't have access to your thinking brain either. So you got to make that as easy as possible, that communication. You're like, oh, okay, I'm going to listen to my favorite song for 3 minutes, or I'm just going to take a walk around the block, or I'm going to go pull some weeds out of my garden. That's what helps me. Pull the friggin' weeds out of my garden, you know. So the next step, step 2, is risk. We're going to assess the risk. And that really is our immediate safety needs met. This isn't just physical safety needs. We also have to consider psychosocial and emotional safety as well, particularly with kids that have been exposed to trauma and abuse. So here's how we're going to do this. So step 2, we're going to assess the problem. So use your observational skills. If your little person's coming to you and there's with a problem, there's behavior concern, you know, first, is everyone okay? Is there any immediate danger? Is anyone bleeding? Is anyone on fire? Like, you know, check that out. And most in my work, I just want to say, like, most of the time the answer is no, but occasionally the answer is yes, the building is on fire. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now that is a problem. That is a me problem now, because I'm the most senior person here. So use your observation skills, look and listen. What is the person doing? What are they not doing? What are they telling you? But also, what are they not telling you? My 2 youngest are absolutely like aces at this. Like, they love daubing on each other. And it's like, oh, yeah, T did this. And I'll be like, all right, F, what did you do? Well, T did. Yeah. So listen to the gaps. Pay attention to that. What's going on around them? So consider the environment and the context. And this is also a good time to observe your own emotional state. So you can be responsive rather than reactive. So this is your decision-making guide. Hopefully you can see all of it. Well, I'm going to send this to Deborah, and I'm going to send this to Benoit and make sure you all have it. This is just a really easy, quick and dirty decision-making guide when there's a problem and a behavior of concern. So first off, our immediate safety needs met. That's always the first priority. So physical needs, is anyone on fire? Is anyone bleeding? Psychosocial needs, is anyone traumatized? Anyone sobbing inconsolably? You know, is there an event going on that's going to cause psychosocial harm that I need to remove my children from? That is a real thing that we need to consider sometimes. Then we go to, is this an actual problem? Is it? Let's assess it. If it is a problem, how big of a problem? And who is it a problem for? Next, okay, so we're drilling down. Next, is this a now problem? You know, is this a now problem? I need to deal with this immediately. And if not now, then when? Like, I need to do my Christmas list. Cool. That is not a now problem. We can do that on the weekend. Done. And then, is this a me problem? This is seriously how I make my decisions. Is this a me problem? Do I need to take some sort of action or find a resolution? If so, what needs to be done? And if not by me, then by whom? So if you follow this pattern, you won't need to hold it up. Like, you can just stick this on your fridge and that's fine. But eventually, like, you will just internalize this rhythm and this pattern of being like, all right, let's dig a little bit deeper. Some tips and tricks here are safety first. As I said, we're always prioritizing immediate safety needs. So try to look beyond the surface of the behavior to what might be underneath. So don't just look at the tip of the iceberg. Context clues are really helpful to assist in your decision making. And the other thing I want to say is that you don't have to solve every problem in the moment, especially if you're feeling some type of way and the child is feeling some type of way. You don't have to solve it. Sometimes you just need to occupy the space together and just be with each other. And that's okay. And we can solve it tomorrow. Like, let's just be with each other tonight. This is a tomorrow problem. So keep that in mind. Step 3, estimate. This is where we're going to estimate the unmet need. Now, can you see the full diagram? Because I can see that like all the people are blocking that. Can you see that full square, Benoit, of the dogs?
Yeah, we can see the dogs.
You can see all of it?
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay, good. So I use dogs. I made this meme and I use dogs because dogs are the best people. Be the person your dog thinks you are. Seriously. So as I said, behavior serves a purpose. It meets a need. As human beings, as people, we all have the same set of universal needs. They are non-negotiable. If we have healthy ways to meet our needs, well done. Congratulations to us. We're probably well-adjusted, functional human beings in society. Yay. But if we don't have healthy ways to meet our needs because they weren't met in a healthy way when we were little, or we didn't have the opportunity, or we didn't have the care, or we weren't taught how to meet those needs in a healthy way, those needs still need to be met. It's just now they will be met with behaviors of concern and things will come out sideways. So there's 4 main kind of functions in behavioral terms. This is where we get a bit technical of behaviors. The first being attention seeking, and I renamed it to connection seeking because attention seeking behavior doesn't necessarily mean, hey mom, look at me, look at me. It can mean that, but connection seeking is really about the person or the child has recognized that other people are a conduit to getting what they want and need in their environment, whether that is love or belonging or connection or reinforcement or, validation, whatever. The next, we're going to go anti-clockwise, is escape avoid. That's a pretty common one. Escape avoid, the selective hearing, when it's time to go up to bed, like, I know you heard me, don't ignore me, I said it 5 times, and then you can open a bag of crisps like down the street and they're like, they sit up, they hear that. So especially when it's something they don't want to do. Escape avoid, natural. You may see behaviors of concern come out when the person doesn't want to do something. Often we see this in schools, like the work is too hard for the child with unmet needs who hasn't slept the night before. And so they'll kick off because it's a lot more socially acceptable to be thought of as naughty than it is dumb, for example. And then we have our tangibles. That is like stuff and things and activities, or pizza, as this dog is really wanting tangibly. So that is like, give me the thing, I want the iPad, I need a drink, I want to, something like that. And then the last is our self-soothing or sensory. We all do this. I'm doing it right now. As I'm talking, I'm doing this. I don't know why I'm doing this. It just makes me feel better and calmer. So I'm going to keep doing it. And I'll bet that if your cameras were on, some of you would be doing something similar, like maybe, rocking back and forth in your chair, or twiddling your hair, or chewing your pen, or stroking your beard, or I don't know, whatever you do. We all do this because it helps us feel calm and regulated. We tap our foot, we rock back and forth. We see this in schools a lot, with kids rocking back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and teachers saying, stop rocking. And the thing is, if you don't meet the need, you're not going to be able to change the behavior. That's why we have to try to figure out what the unmet need is. So, as I said, I'm going to blow through this pretty quickly because I'm very mindful of the time. Attention connection seeking behavior, what this means is to access things like support, assistance, reinforcement, social attention. What it may look like are seemingly intentional or naughty behaviors, like flooding the bathroom or spreading poo on the walls, both of which happened to us when we were in kinship care. And that was the child's way of crying out for attention. Like their experience of the world was that the adults who loved and cared for them were going to leave them. And that was her experience, as she expected us to leave her. So she was like, I can't control, I mean, she couldn't say this, but she couldn't control when we were going to give up on her, but she could, and that predictability is comforting for somebody who internal world is chaos and not knowing. So we may see things like intentional naughty behaviors, or behaviors that seem like designed to get attention, or to like intentionally annoy or irritate. We all know that. I mean, if you had a sibling, you had the I'm not touching you, I'm not touching you. We also might see, though, feigned helplessness or regressive behaviors, particularly with trauma affected kids, where, and that's a way of seeking, that's their way of seeking nurturing and reassurance. So like my youngest, for example, when she's really overwhelmed, will just like lose all of her adaptive skills. Like she doesn't know how to do anything anymore. It's like, all right, get ready for bed. And she's like, I don't know how to take my shirt off. I need you to do it for me. And it's that real way. Like she can't say, I'm feeling insecure, I'm feeling overwhelmed. She's seeking comforting, and she's seeking nurturing, and that's the only way she knows how to ask for it. So in that sense, what we do is we help her, but we don't do it for her. We're here to support her, but she can do it. And I'll tell you what to do. Okay, so lift it up over your head. It's all right. I'm here and I'll be here. And it may take 10 minutes, but I don't want to decrease her window of tolerance. I don't want to disable her more by doing the things that she can already do for her. That's actually not helpful. So when we have a tangible function, a tangible meaning, that means an access to preferred item or activity. We've talked about that in great detail, so I'm going to skip that. Escape, avoid, pretty self-explanatory. To escape, terminate, or avoid a negative, unpleasant, or aversive situation. Something that you need to keep in mind for kids who've experienced trauma or who have unmet needs, they often have unmet sensory needs. So like my middle child, for example, has unmet sensory needs, and she's hypersensitive to noise. So we had to get her bamboo cutlery and stuff because she couldn't stand the sound of the fork on the plate. We couldn't take her into public restrooms because the noise of the air dryers was too much for her, and she would go into a complete trauma response and meltdown. And what we needed to do was gradually expose her rather than just get rid of all those factors, because in the end, those things are part of life, and we have to actually teach and support resilience. When we have an automatic function, what that means is that the behavior serves as its own reinforcement. It has nothing to do with other people. If you see, and usually it's like sensory or pain attenuation. So you may see like self-stimming behaviors. We all do it. Like I said, hair twirling, rocking, spinning. Sometimes a bit more on the unmet need, and we may see like flapping or rocking, but we may also see self-injurious behaviors. So our kinship care child had really severe self-injurious behaviors, and at the time she was only like 4 or something, and that was her way of seeking and eliciting. She was seeking that feedback, I think, from internally, but also that was her way of seeking support and help from us. That was her way of telling us she was having a big feeling and she didn't know what to do with it. So she was trying to make her outside hurt as much as her inside, if that makes sense. So what we also might see is self-directed behaviors that occur when the person is alone or without an observable like antecedent, without something that comes before that. Are there any questions about this? Because I got a little bit technical, and I just want to see if there's any questions about this part before I move on. Hugh, my daughter won't wipe her bottom and always unrolls the whole toilet paper roll. Only daughter, my husband, you can't see him, but he's gone. Because our daughter does that too. Yeah. What I would say is toileting is a really specific and a really kind of, it's a bit of a minefield, I will say. So we have to teach the right and reinforce the right toileting skills, and repetition and reinforcement. So we actually, this is a problem with my middle daughter because she doesn't have good interoception. Interoception is the awareness of the changing states in our body. She doesn't have that. So she doesn't notice things in her body until they become extreme. She doesn't notice that she's hungry until she's ravenous. She doesn't notice that she needs to do a wee until she's busting. She doesn't notice that she's wet the bed, and it doesn't matter to her that she's sitting in wee. So she also doesn't notice and doesn't mind when she doesn't wipe her bottom properly. So I don't know why this keeps doing that. Stop that. So what I would say is you teach it and you reinforce it. If it's, you know, whoever is the primary caregiver. So for me, like I do it, like I don't do it with her, but we do it together. Okay, so we practice it when she doesn't need to do it, when she doesn't actually have a poo, we practice it. So what do? Okay, we take the toilet paper and put it here. We don't scrunch it, and then we might have a reinforcement chart where she might get a sticker for every day that there's no poo and undies. Fantastic. And if she does have a day where there's poo and undies, we don't take away a sticker. We just try again tomorrow. So, you know, and then, you know, once you get to 5, whatever stickers or however you do it, big reward, whatever you want, like but do that beforehand. What do you want? What's something special? Oh, I want an LOL doll. I want to go to this movie. I want to have boba, whatever. Cool. 5 stickers, no poo in your pants. Boba it is. If it continues, I don't want to get off track, but I would consider the age and stage of the child and maybe consult a pediatrician if it continues and if you're concerned about it. That's probably the best course of action. All right. So, like I said, think deeper. I'm not going to go through that slide. We're going to think deeper. That's the bad behavior iceberg that I was talking about. So yay, I did include it. Go me. The behavior cannot be changed without meeting the underlying need. So I just want to say, you can't be like, don't do that behavior anymore and think that that's going to be done with it, because it's not. If you don't meet the unmet need, you're not going to be successful at changing the behavior. And there's a lot of context, as you can see. This is from Juliette Lewis. She's a psychologist, and she does a lot of work. She does a lot of artwork actually on Twitter, and she's doing her own website, but everybody loves this bad behavior iceberg. And you can see why, because what we see sits on the surface. That gets our attention. But what's underneath is the context and all the unmet needs driving it. Anxiety, shame is a big one, especially for trauma-affected kids. Feeling dumb at school because they can't concentrate on their work because they're hypervigilant because they've been traumatized, like, and then they're falling behind, and then they're the dumb kid, and then they get turned into the naughty kid, then the celebrity naughty kid at the school. So there's a lot here that goes into the surface of what we see. And I want to say, you're not behavior analysts, you're carers. You know, I'm a behavior analyst and I'm a carer, and I want to say that I've been a behavior analyst for 24 years, and there are still times when I'm like, I have no effing idea what to do here. What? Yeah, tap out. So sometimes the unmet need, like identifying the unmet need or function, isn't easy, and we don't always get it right on the first go. Just know that's okay. As long as you learn, you adapt, and you try again. We don't get it right the first time. That's all right. Go back, stop that. So, and also remember that behavior can have more than one function, and it can also serve different functions, different meanings in different circumstances. So that context is really important. Like I said, I know you're not behavior analysts, but consider the unmet need. Consider the context. Next is step 4, which is where we are going to appropriate, which means to set apart. I couldn't find a better word, but that's what appropriate, not appropriate, means, to set apart. And what this means for us is setting apart the behavior. And we do that through unconditional positive regard. So this comes to us from the work of Carl Rogers. And if you know anything about psychology or psychotherapy or whatever, or if you've been in that field, you will have learned unconditional positive regard like on day 1. And how it works is we separate the person from the behavior. So the person is not the behavior, and the behavior is not the person. So in layman's terms, the behavior may be bad, but the child isn't. And that's really important. So remember the brain functions and actions And remember that there's likely some unmet needs here, and there's likely some deficits because of the experience that your little people have gone through. So we need to have empathy for that unmet need. And empathy is really what helps us get the lid on. Really, empathy is a game changer. Because empathy, if you can see past the behavior and see the child in crisis, that's what that really is. That's that child calling out for help or having an unmet need, and it's coming out sideways. So we need to have empathy for that unmet need and then call them in with love. We're not calling them out. We're bringing them to us. We're calling them in. So I would still, and whatever word is most appropriate for your situation, what I say is, I still love you. I will always love you, but that behavior is not okay. So I will always love you no matter what. You'll always be my bunny, but it is not okay to bite your sister. True story. So that's your secure base and safe haven, because kids need two things to really thrive. They need love and they need limits. They need to, so they need to know that you are there to support them and will be their soft place to land as they go out into the world. So watch your language. Unconditional positive regard starts with our language. And I will say humans have an inherent negativity bias as part of our survival mechanism. Like, we're just naturally attuned to danger and like things that are bad or wrong faster than things that are right, because that's what keeps us alive. So unconditional positive regard really starts with our language. So watch your language, like things like, oh, you're so naughty. That behavior is so naughty. That's okay. Like, you can say that. So I'm so disappointed in you. Don't say that. You can be disappointed in what they did, but we're not disappointed in the kid. Kid's doing the best they can, and it's coming out sideways. So we need to have empathy for that. It's also how we talk about other kids. Oh, he's so bad. Oh, he's the bad kid. Stay away from him. Oh, she's so naughty. Stay away from her. She's trouble. She's just mean. Are you going to be good today? Oh, I hear that a lot. Are you going to be good today? Well, I was, until you brought to my attention that there may be an alternative. So, and also, what does good mean? What does it mean to be good? Have we defined it? Have we explained it? Have we taught it? Have we reinforced it? Because if so, then what does it mean if we're not good? And that's inappropriate. I'm going to say this, like, that's inappropriate. That's inappropriate. I hear that a lot. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because okay, appropriate and inappropriate are abstract concepts that assume understanding and meaning. But we can't say something's inappropriate if we haven't actually taught and reinforced and explicitly taught and reinforced what is appropriate to do in that situation. We can't just say something's wrong without teaching something right. So catch them being good. That's what we're trying to do here. So some tips and tricks to keeping the behaviors separate from the person. Try not to take things personally. I know this is hard because it really feels personal sometimes. Like, someone's in your face, like calling you an effing C. Like, it's hard to be like, this isn't about me. This isn't personal. Like, it feels personal. Like, it's not. Like, it's the child is having an unmet need. They're having a moment. It's coming out sideways and you're standing in front of them. So have empathy for that unmet need. And I will say, having a sense of humor really does help. My middle child has a death stare when she is unhappy about something. She did it to me today, and she will just stare blankly. And it's a stare down. And so I was like, oh, you want to stare down? All right, all right, all right. Let me take my earrings off. So I stared at her, I stared at her, I stared at her, and then I started doing this. And she couldn't keep a straight face, and that broke it. So also, like, I will never forget the day I had a student come up to me. It was so angry about something because I was a teacher, and he told me to go suck a fart. And I was like, I'm so impressed with that. Well done. I'm not even mad. That was so creative. So spot the strength sometimes. Like, that was a really creative insult. Well done, you. So act as a stimulus change or circuit breaker. That silly face that I made, that was a stimulus change. That broke that trajectory of like, oh, you're gonna, oh, here we go. It's like, no, we're not going there. So be creative. And I also want to say, beware the tyranny of low expectations. And the tyranny of low expectations really kind of means, it kind of like, in layman's terms, it boils down to, hey, you've had a hard life, you've had trauma, or you have a disability, or you have mental illness, or you have substance use disorder, and we just don't expect a lot from you because, you know, so we don't expect a lot from you, so we're not going to teach you a lot. And the thing about low expectations is that nobody rises to low expectations. You set the bar down here, it's as high as they're going to go. You have to set high expectations, and because you have to want more from your kids and you expect more from them because you want more for them, and you're going to teach them how to do that and support them to meet their needs in a healthy way over and over and over again. Think about when you were learning to brush your teeth. Somebody didn't just take you to the bathroom and were like, all right, there you go. Tell me when you're done. They had to take you through step by step by step by step. And it probably took, you know, a couple of years, at least, you know, in my kid's case, before you're brushing your teeth like properly, not just the front, like, and then the sides have all the plaque and stuff. Like, no, think about that. All the steps that go into brushing your teeth and brushing them properly and all of that, like, that's a lot of tasks. So we have to really break that down when we are teaching what to do rather than what not to do. So step 5, we're going to temper it. We're going to tame it down. First things first, get those lids on, because nothing is going to get solved while anyone's lid is flipped. I just want to tell you that. So be the lighthouse, not the storm. Co-regulation is the key here, with, not for. Because I'll tell you what, if I'm having a moment and someone's like, just calm down, it's not that serious, just calm down, I'll be like, oh, it's not that serious? You didn't think it was that serious? You're about to find out how serious it was. I'm gonna take my earrings out. Like, it's on now. So no, when our lids are flipped and someone tells us to use the thinking part of our brain, just calm down. You know, they're asking us to use a part of our brain we don't have access to at that moment because our lids are flipped. So what we need to do is model, get the mirror neurons to get the lid on nice and tight. And that helps our relationship. So if you've heard of PACE, it comes to us from the work of Dan Hughes. He comes to Melbourne for the Australian Childhood Foundation Child Trauma Conference every couple of years or so. I think the next one is next year. Just BT dubs. It's like the celebrities of like the trauma world. Everyone's like fangirling over Dan Siegel. It's weird. So we have PACE. PACE is an acronym. It stands for play, acceptance, curiosity, and empathy. So play is really about engaging in a way that it encourages spontaneity, curiosity. Be interested in show interest in what your kids are interested in. If they're interested in Roblox, ask them to tell you about it. If they're interested in Taekwondo, go to their lessons, go to their gradings. If they're interested in Minecraft, ask them to show you how to do it. Take an active interest. I will say active, constructive responding, a great way to build relationships. When kids or people tell you information that they're excited about, the best way that you can respond, be stoked, ask questions. Oh my God, that's so amazing. When is that happening? What are you going to wear? Blah, blah, blah. Acceptance is that unconditional positive regard. Curiosity is wondering without judgment. And I will say, I wonder statements are really helpful when the child doesn't have the words or the emotional intelligence to make sense or to tell you what's going on. But they will be able to tell you if you're right or wrong. So I find, like, if I say things like, I wonder if this is like the time you look like, to me, it reminds me of the time when something similar, blah, 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 and this is what I did. And I wonder if that's what's happening for you now. And kids may not be able to say all that, but they will be able to nod or shake their head. So I wonder statements, you're kind of opening that up. And then empathy is that real game changer, because the antidote to shame is empathy. Brene Brown loves saying that, if you know her. She's a sociologist and she does a lot of TED Talks and things, and she writes a lot of books. Big fan. But empathy is really about letting the person know, letting the child know they will not be abandoned, and that you will together help them through this. You're being present together. I will never forget when our kinship 4-year-old just had an absolute meltdown one day. I don't even remember what it was about. Do you remember? Hugh? I'm not even going to remember. And she went to her room and she was screaming and crying and slamming herself into the walls. She was choking herself. She was just out of control. And I came into the room, and she was coming at me. I came into the room with a really big pillow to protect myself, and my phone, and I played some white noise, and I just sat there and I played white noise, and the white noise was a waves. So that give and take, that push and pull, that reciprocity, that's that co-regulation, that you and me and you and me, and that rhythm. Also, hearing that helps regulate and bring down that heart rate. So I sat there against the door because she was trying to flee. So I sat there against the door with her, with my pillow, with my white noise, and I just sat there. And then, and eventually she started to calm, and I moved the pillow, and slowly, she started coming over closer and closer until she was in my lap. And then she just literally, I could feel her little body just collapse. And I just held her and I just rocked her to the rhythm. And that's what she needed. We're all big babies in the end. So step 6, we might get through all 7. Help make it better. This is where we're going to fix it. So problem solve. Start with the end in mind. What outcome do you want? So for example, we are, as a family, Hugh and I, we don't like lying. So, but we also need our kids to meet their basic needs, like brushing their teeth. So when I ask my youngest, hey, have you brushed your teeth? And I know she's lying to me, and she says, yes, I did. And I'll be like, did you really? Because so if I go and check your toothbrush, it's going to be wet and it's going to smell like toothpaste. Then the blank stare, like, and that's my cue to say, are you sure you brushed your teeth? Do you think you want to brush them again? And she goes, mm-hmm. And I go, okay, off you go. I'm not going to punish her for lying, because the outcome I want is for her to brush her teeth. The lying is not the issue in this moment. And if I punish her for lying to me, what I'm actually doing is reinforcing her lying to me. Because the next time she's not going to tell me the truth, because I'm going to, so the important part here is the outcome. And the outcome for us was brushing the teeth. We can talk about the lying in a separate thing, separately. So remember boundaries. Boundaries are so important for you, for the child, your love and limits. Remember that. People say like, oh, I remember one of our social workers told me, well, maybe you just don't say no. And I was like, that is the worst advice anyone's ever given. I was like, you kids need to hear no, because sometimes no is the answer, but you can say no in a loving way. And I really like the kind of script of no, because, and no, you can't have ice cream because you had a lot of cake at the birthday party. And maybe tomorrow after school, you can have something from your Halloween basket. So the other thing is that it's really important for us to follow through. So if I say, maybe tomorrow you can have something from your Halloween basket, you better be damn sure that I have to set a timer, alarm in my phone to remember to follow through and say, hey, you had a great day. Go grab something from your Halloween basket. If I say to my kids, like they're trying to settle and they keep coming out of bed, I will come and check on you in 5 minutes, but you have to be quiet, you have to be calm, and I'll come and check on you in 5 minutes. I'm setting an alarm on my phone to go off in 5 minutes so that I am there. I'm showing up. The best and most protective thing you can do for your child in your care is choose how you show up for them. And you show up for them every day. So love and limits go hand in hand. And also keep in mind, what are your non-negotiables? Aren't mine, and like one non-negotiable for everyone. I'm just gonna like give you an advance, answer on the quiz that doesn't exist. Safety. Safety has to be a non-negotiable for everyone. But for other people, there's other non-negotiables, like don't poke lasers in the cat's eyes. That's a thing that happened to us. He's over there shaking his head. Whatever. Like I said, you contextualize and fit it to what is most meaningful for you. Okay. Collaborative problem solving can be really helpful. This comes to us from the work of, I think it's Russ Green, and he's amazing. He does a lot of work with, he's the brain behind collaborative problem solving. And the theory behind collaborative problem solving is that kids do well if they can. So I'm going to give this resource to everyone so that you'll have it, because he provides this collaborative problem solving template. But really, and he's written a bunch of books as well. It's about using the problem solving assessment and planning tool. We'll just put that to the side. But really the planning is about a collaborative nature, because learning is a reciprocal process, right? It's a you and me. It's not, we're not filling empty vessels. It's a relationship. So our planning is setting shared goals. What's important to both of us? What's really important to you? What's really important to me? These goals have to be achievable, and they have to be socially significant, which means they have to be meaningful to the individual. So, and most meaningful. So, if a person doesn't know how to wipe their bottom properly, that's probably the higher priority than learning how to fold origami, for example. So, and then our intervention is empathy. We're clarifying the young person's concern. What is their non-negotiable? Where are they coming from? We're going to hear them with open ears. And then we're going to share our concerns as objectively as we can. And then together we brainstorm, we assess, we choose a solution, and then we give it a go. And we see if it works. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, we come back and we try again. So that I will give you a copy of that collaborative problem solving tool. So some tips and tricks here are to be explicit. Tell the person exactly how to be successful. So teach them what to do rather than what not to do. It's a really slight change, but it can be really helpful. So instead of don't stand on the table, 2 feet on the ground, please. It's a little switch, but it's helpful. Reinforce the behavior that you want to see. Catch them being good. If they are playing so well with their siblings and so gently and whatever else, call them in. Catch them being good. I see that strength of kindness in you with the way that you're sharing together. I spot the strengths in my kids and they love it. Like they lean in. My eldest, I said, has a real connection with animals, and that's one of her strengths. And she's internalized that, and she really believes that about herself. And like, I have a strong connection with animals, and she's interested in them because she, that part of her was nurtured. So consider the child's strengths and how these can be utilized to teach skills and to meet those shared goals. And finally, in step 7, we're going to evaluate. So this is where we review and reflect. How well did things work out? The thing happened. Well, what was the outcome? What worked? What didn't? Check in with yourself. Check in with someone else. And that's also really important. So when we review, having a sounding board or a trusted advisor, somebody whose judgment you trust, is really, really helpful, because when we're in our emotions, when our lid is flipped, we are reactive, not responsive. So we're going by what we feel, and what we feel doesn't always match the context and the circumstances around us. So that's really important to keep in mind. If you have a strong feeling about something to do with how you're caring for your child, or you're feeling some type of way, that is your cue to check in with somebody who you trust and whose judgment you trust. Find a tribe. If you can't find one, build one. Lou Cozolino wrote a great book. It's called The Social Neuroscience of Education. I love him because he's from Brooklyn and he reminds me of my own cousin Lou. He kind of talks like this. And he's the one that talks about this social reciprocity of learning, the norm of reciprocity. And what he says is that learning is a social process, and you make your classrooms a tribe. So you make your homes a tribe, you make your neighborhood a tribe. So I have a family tribe, I have a friends tribe, I have a work tribe, I have a different tribe. So I build tribes because as humans, we're herd animals. We don't do well in isolation. So this is a tribe. We are a tribe here right now. And like I said, if you can't find one to join, build one. Remember to reflect not only on what went wrong, but what went well. So what you're seeing there is a photo of what I call my mommy jar. It's like the stickers, right? It's a little thing of reinforcement for me. It sits on my window in my bathroom. And I have the balls in there. And whenever I do, it's just specifically for me because I think as carers, we're so hard on ourselves as parents, as carers, like we internalize so much. And I will just tell you right now, I have worked with a lot of bad parents. Bad parents don't worry about if they're bad parents. I'll just say that. Like they don't ever ask that. They don't worry about that. Am I a bad parent? Like bad parents don't worry about that. Good parents do. So if you're ever worried, like, oh, am I doing enough? Am I a good carer? That's your answer, because bad parents and bad carers don't ask those questions. So remember to reflect on what went well. So I drop a bead every time I do something positive for my kids. Like, oh, I got up early and I made their lunches and gave them an extra thing. Or I sat down and watched Malcolm in the Middle with my eldest. Or I ordered pizza. Or I spotted a strength. And then when it gets full, I reward myself with adding to my collection of rude cat magnets, which is my thing. Nowhere to go to for support. This tribe is one place you can go to for support. And also cut yourself some slack. This is hard. It's hard parenting, full stop, just full stop. And it's hard being a carer, and it's hard caring for kids with unmet needs. You are doing your best. Cut yourself some slack. You're doing a good job. In summary, breathe. That's the summary, is to breathe. And I say it twice because it's an acronym, because it's that important. It balances our parasympathetic, which is our accelerator, and our sympathetic nervous system, our brake. So when we take those big, deep diaphragmatic breaths, we're balancing our central nervous system. And so if we do this, it's fun to do it with little kids too. Like they can get on the ground and put like a little soft toy or like a little toy boat, and they can make it move by breathing in really deep. Or like you can blow bubbles. There's all sorts of things. So this is the summary here. I'm aware of the time. We've got 10 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for questions. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And I'm going to stop sharing. Or maybe I'll leave it for now. Oh, there's my references. Yay. There it is. Okay. I don't know why it goes automatically.